Hi, my name is Hugo Silva, and today I'm going to show you a presentation on creating custom editor tools for Unity. We're going to talk about existing tools already in Unity, show you a couple of examples, tell you why you should create your own custom tools, what are the benefits, and give you a live demo to show you how to start creating your own tools. So if you ever used Unity, you probably already used a tool at some point. In this case, we're going to focus on the animator window that has custom visual elements that allow you to move them, configure them, and link them to create the logic, in this case, for a jump sequence on a locomotion of a character. We can also add other tools by creating menus on the menu bar in Unity that allow us to do multiple functions, in this case, for a build system. So why should you create your own custom tools? Well, tools can be made to fit your needs. They can be as simple or as complex as you need them to be, but they usually always serve a specific purpose. So if you have a very complex loadout system, you might need a character loadout visualizer to actually see your items on a character. If your game has a procedural map generator, you might want a tool that allows you to see maps without going in-game. If you have a very complex mission system, you might need a mission dependency graph that allows you to check requirements for missions in runtime. And if you have a bug tracking solution, you might want to integrate it to Unity to save time in switching between apps. In the live demo, we're going to show you a simple go-to menu that will allow you to move very fast within your map. Some of the benefits of creating custom tools are that they improve workflow. You can automate a lot of repetitive tasks. This is going to save us time in the long run of the project. And we can also simplify complex setups. So in the case of multiplayer games, if we need to launch a server and a client, we can just click a button and run multiple systems at once, and it just works. And this is going to save us even more time. These savings in time are going to make our iterations times much faster, so it's much easier to test your ideas when you just need to press a button to get in game. And all of these things are going to make much easier development. Unity kind of becomes a one-stop solution for all your needs, so you just need to focus on Unity. So how can you get started? You're going to need a little bit of code, and I'm going to teach you today about using Unity Editor, what's a editor window, how can you use editor GUI layout and GUI layout to create elements, and what is a custom editor. I would also like to mention, if you'd like to learn more about this, please check the documentation on the Unity website and look for Unity editor information. So moving on to Unity, I'm going to use the FPS sample project available on the Unity GitHub to actually create my demo. As we can see, there's a bunch of tools already created for this project, which you can check online. But for this case, I just created this free empty C# script that we're going to fill right now. So our go-to tool is essentially going to be a way that allows us to move very fast in between scenes. Maybe you have a very big level that has many details and not everyone knows about them, and you want to show people, and instead of a person needing to go in game and looking everywhere, you just want a simple way to show people where things are. So what could be useful is like a window that we can probably dock, and then some kind of like list that shows our go-tos, and just a button that allows us to go there. So let's start on our scripts actually doing that. We're going to go to our go-to menu, and we're going to start by defining our class that is going to be our editor window. I'm going to call it go-to menu, and this is going to derive from editor window, which is using the Unity editor namespace. So this is going to define our window, but we need a way to actually access this window. So I'm going to use this piece of code, which uses the menu item attribute, which will take a string, which will construct the menu hierarchy that we want to display our button with. Using this attribute, we need to create a public static void function. In this case, I called one show window. It's just going to get a window of the same type we just defined, and it's going to call it go to menu window. So if we go into Unity and follow this path, so that should be FPS sample. It just needed to compile. FPS sample. go-to menu, and we have our go-to menu window. So fantastic, it's working so far. But we need to think about where are we going to save this data. So for that, I'm actually gonna use another script, and I'm going to go to my go-to list. And for our go-to data, I'm actually gonna call it go-to location. This is gonna be serializable, and I'm gonna save a name, a position, and a rotation. This is just basically gonna be the name of the go-to, the position of it, and the rotation of it, because it's important to not only keep track of where we are in the level, but also where we are looking at. So I'm gonna save these three, and our go-to list, which is going to be a scriptable object, it's only going to be a list of go-to locations. And I call that variable go-to list. So nothing too fancy. We also have the attribute create asset menu, which also allows us to create scriptable objects from the property window. So in this case, if we right click and we go create, and it didn't compile, we're waiting it for a compile, it should be done now. If we go into right click, create scriptable objects, go to list. I'm not going to create one right now because I want my window to take care of that. So we should go back into our menu window, and we are going now to start actually putting stuff on our window. And for that, I'm going to use the onGUI function. And I want to put on a label, a text field, and a button. I also need to create a string for my go-to name, which is going to be used by my text field, so that I have some place to actually store the name of the go-to that I want. So our window now should have a label, a text field, and a button. We're going back into Unity, wait for it to compile, look at our window, and we can see that it now has a label, text field, and a button. Currently, the button doesn't do anything because we didn't address that. But we now need to think about the data that we just created. So for this, I'm actually going to use a variable called goToData, which is going to be our go-to list. I created a static string, which is going to be our asset path, where we want to save our data. In this case, it would be on the assets/goTo's asset. And I'm going to use the onEnable function to check if our asset actually exists on our using the asset path. And if it does exist, I'm going to use the asset database to load that asset into the object that we just created to store our go-to list. If it doesn't exist, I'll just create an instance of our go-to list, which is a scriptable object, and then create an asset with that data on that path. So once the window is enabled, we're already sure that at least some data exists. So we can go back into our GUI and we can look at our button and you say, okay, well, we have a place where to put this data. Now let's make the function to actually save this data. And for that, I just created a void save goto. And I need to basically make sure once the button is pressed, it actually executes this save goto. And what the function actually does is creates just a go-to location. It uses the name that we inputted on the text field, and it goes into the scene view, which is the scene view as we see it in the editor, and it gets the last active scene view, makes sure there is one. It goes in and looks for the transform of the camera of that scene view, and I stored the position and rotation. Once I have all of this information, I just add that location to my list, and then I empty my stream because if I want to add another location, I just want that string to be empty so I can just fill it in with a new name. After doing all of this, I need to use the editor utils to set dirty on my data. So it will say this data has been changed. And when after that, I can use my asset database to save all assets. So I just said my data has changed, and because it has changed, it can now be saved. So if I save all of this, and I go back into Unity, it can actually find let's say a good view of this pink room, and I can go in and I can say, okay, this is a pink room, and I can add a go-to. And again, the string disappeared. We click on a button, but we don't actually see where the data has gone to. And for that, it might be a good idea to create some more visual elements to actually see where this data is going. So if we go back onto our onGUI function, we can actually add a little bit more code. And for this, I'm going to add another label, which is just going to say list. I'm going to create a begin vertical. This is just basically saying that all the elements that come after this are going to be stacked vertically. I actually applied a style to it because I want it to be a little bit different than above. So just so we get an idea that this is all together data, it's going to be a list. We go through our list to find all of our locations. We're going to stack them horizontally. So it's going to be a label followed by a button that's going to say go to. And on the label, it's going to have the name of the go to. And once you actually press the button, it's going to get your scene view. It's going to get the last active one. It's going to verify that it has it. It's going to check for the camera transform at that scene view. It's basically going to copy the values that we have on our location to it. And then we're going to say like, hey, scene view, align to the object that we just modified. And that's just basically going to be it. We have then we have like end tags for the horizontal and vertical. But these are just saying like, hey, by the end of this, we just want to horizontally stack the label and the button, nothing else. And at the end of the list, we just say like, enough, there's enough lists right now. So in here, we should actually see a label followed by a specific area that has a label with the name of the go-to and a button. And to actually test that this works, we can go into a new room. Let's say this one, and let's just call this one, for example, a blue room, right? And we can add this go-to. And if we want to go back into our pinkish room, we can just go to that room. And if we want to go back into our blue room, we can just go back to it. And right now, this is an arena, so it's quite small. Once you have a tremendous level with a bunch of rooms and a bunch of locations, and you don't know where one is, you can just have a list of go-tos and go to it very easily without, well, basically disturbing anyone for that. One thing that I would like to mention is that if we check, we can close our window now. If we check the asset that we just created, it does exist here, this go-to asset. But if we look at the inspector, it just shows all of the data, and someone can come here and actually change all of this data without actually knowing what they're doing. So it would be a good idea to actually put a warning here saying like, hey, please don't touch this file because this is being used by a tool. We can actually do that using a custom editor attribute. So I'm going to go to the last class that I have yet to fill. So this go to list editor, and I'm going to use a custom editor attribute that is going to look for objects of the type go to list. And using the onInspector GUI function, I'm just going to create a help box that is going to say, please do not delete this file. It's being used by the custom tool go-to menu. It's going to show like it's a warning. And I'm going to have a button that allows you to go directly into the go-to menu, just in case they look at the file and they say, oh, what does this do? And they can actually check it out. So if you go back into Unity, wait for it to compile. If we select the same file again, we now see the warning, we now see the button, and if we press the button, we get our window back with exactly the same values as what we used to see. So this is the go-to tool that I wanted to show you, and I would just like to mention that the FPS project is available on the Unity GitHub repository, and there's also a Unity blog post about the same project. I'd like to thank you for your time, and I hope you learned something. Hope you enjoy.